The battles of Forts Henry and Donelson, though they had some setbacks, were impressive and rewarding victories for the North, as well as earning Ulysses S. Grant one of his first major victories. Soon after the South seceded in 1861, Albert Sidney Johnston was placed in command of all Confederate troops in the West. He quickly moves his men to take key locations in Kentucky. Ulysses S. Grant, only a brigadier general at the time, receives permission from the Union Department commander, General Henry Halleck, to move down the Tennessee and Cumberland rivers to capture Forts Henry and Donelson. He is accompanied by a Navy flotilla under Admiral Andrew Foote. The party sets off at the beginning of February and soon arrives at their target. Fort Henry on the Tennessee River is half flooded by recent rains, and after a quick cannonade, it falls to Foote's gunboats. After securing the fort's surrender, Grant moves on to Fort Donelson. The march to Fort Donelson is long and tiring, with the temperature being relatively hot for February. The Union troops, marching in the heat, throw much of their needed gear away, including blankets and overcoats. When Grant arrives at Fort Donelson, he is confronted with a much different scene than at Fort Henry. For Fort Donelson is much stronger than Henry. Being well built and maintained, the only flaw in the fort is the commander, General Floyd, who was a politician before the war. Soon after arriving, Grant, throughout February 13th, launches several infantry attacks on Fort Donelson, while the Union ironclad Carondelet bombards the Confederate batteries that dominate the bluffs of the Cumberland River. Despite these efforts, by the end of the day, Grant has failed, and the Confederates still hold their position. That night, in a sharp turn of events, it snows, and the temperature drops to 10 degrees Fahrenheit. In the chilling temperatures, some of the wounded freeze to death, and the men on both sides are freezing, especially the Union troops, many of whom left their winter gear behind on the march. On February 14th, Foote advances his flotilla of gunboats and engages the Confederate batteries. After a fierce engagement, the torn-up Union boats retreat back down the river, and the fighting for the day comes to an end. During the night, Floyd masses his troops for an all-out attack the next morning, and as the sun rises on February 15th, Southern troops ferociously attack the Union Army's right flank. The Union soldiers attempt to hold out, but before long, their ammunition runs out, and so they are forced to retreat. At this critical moment, the Confederates pause in indecision. Grant, during the attack, was having a meeting with Admiral Foote. When he hears of the attack, he quickly sends in reinforcements who begin to slowly push the rebels back. During this time, Floyd and his generals had a meeting to decide what to do, and in the strangest tactic of all, instead of trying to make a getaway or further attack Grant's army, Floyd decides to pull back inside Fort Donelson. This gives Grant the opportunity to surround the fort, preventing the Confederate army from escaping. That night, Floyd, afraid of being captured, flees across the river. Before leaving, he gives the command to General Pillow, who also runs away. Simon B. Buckner, the third in command, is left to surrender the Confederate army. When Buckner asks for terms, Grant responds, "No terms but unconditional and immediate surrender can be accepted." This act makes Grant a hero in the North. Total casualties for the Battle of Fort Donelson were, for the Union, about 2,700, and for the Confederates, about 13,800, 12,000 of whom were captured. With the Tennessee and Cumberland rivers open to the north, Albert Sidney Johnston is forced to pull his men back into northern Mississippi. The Union forces are able to capture Nashville along with most of western Tennessee. This all sets the stage for one of the most climactic battles of the American Civil War, the Battle of Shiloh.